Welcome back to the Huddle on High Street. Usually, I don't post this early in the week. I usually like to go week to week on the videos, but there's just been so much news in this off season so far that there's just like so much to report on, so many thoughts that I have about it. But obviously, the big news today that Denzel Burke is going to return, and this is a shot that came to me kind of out of left field. I don't think anybody thought that he was coming back. Um, so I kind of just disregarded, even though they said there was a possibility of it, I kind of just disregarded that he was going to be coming back the entire time because I really just honestly didn't believe it because I had to think like with the year he had, people are really underrating the year he had, I guess, because I see perhaps the top corner in the draft, maybe not the best, but he had a ridiculous year. People couldn't throw the ball against him. He and what's crazy about Denzel Burke is his previous year to that, his sophomore season, he had a bad year. I thought he had a pretty garbage year the sophomore year, and I was like, it always seemed like he was the issue. There was a liability there, is what I saw. And he came into this year and completely just turned it around 100%, looked really good. You could tell like through the first couple of weeks, like, wow, yeah, this guy worked on his game. He's going to be a really good NFL player too. Um, but yeah, you could tell that he had really just studied his game when before the Michigan game, out of all the interviews that I heard pertaining to about the seriousness of the rivalry, Denzel Burke had the best interview. He looked like he was generally mad and he generally cared about it. Obviously, they didn't win the game, but if you watch his interview, he was really, he was really up to the challenge, and he looked really locked in. And that's all you can ask for. And he should have had. Yeah, I mean, obviously, you don't get that call in that game where the Michigan guy had the ball, gets jarred loose. Denzel Burke comes up with what would have been a game-changing interception, would have changed the complexity of the game, would have maybe swung the final score of that game in a different direction. Doesn't get that call. He gets that call. He's a hero. Obviously, that doesn't mean just because they got that call that they would have won the game, but it would have been a really, really big play, and that was through Denzel Burke. So I mean, he's had his moments here for him to come back, and the only time where I ever considered that it was actually going to be a possibility is after the national championship every year, they release a mock draft, and usually these mock drafts are the most up to date so far to who's going to get drafted where. And I was looking at the first round, and you had obviously Marvin Harrison Jr.'s high up there. JTT hasn't made his decision yet at the time of this video. He was towards the bottom of the first round, and I was very surprised within all the mock drafts that I saw. No Denzel Burke. No Denzel Burke in first round mock drafts, telling me that if he would have went pro, we're looking at a day 2 guy. And I don't agree with that. And I think maybe he had people saying, we don't agree with that either. And he sat down and said, I'm gonna have to stay at OU to prove these people wrong. And I think that is some of the problem too. Some of the players on Ohio State, their draft stock has somewhat plummeted just due to the result of this year. And that's not everybody. Marvin Harrison Jr. is still perhaps the most sought after wide receiver NFL draft prospect ever. But that's a given. Like Emeka Ibuka, if he's to come back, it's because he's not slotted in the first round. He's clearly a first round receiver. Travion Henderson, clearly a first, second round back. If he's slotted in like the third round, at that point, you got to come back. At that point, you just have to. So, obviously, a lot of factors, a lot of things that, go in to the decisions of who's going to the draft, who's not going to the draft. But it just seems at this point, because obviously, when you win the national championship or you're in the national championship game or even the college football playoff, your stock is just naturally going to rise. There's more eyes on you. More people are seeing your game. Michael Penix didn't have that big game against Texas. I don't know if he goes in the first round. He's pretty much a lock to go in the first round now. Even with that shaky game against Michigan, lock to go in the first round at this point. So it really factors. Depends where you play. It depends what you show when everybody's watching. And that's why players like in my opinion, after looking at the mock draft, I was like, oh, he might come back. Because he's clearly a first-round talent. And I think a lot of people are thinking, Ohio State, they could make a serious run at this next year. And part of the reason he's come back too is that they're pissed. They're mad. They're mad they've lost to Michigan every year they've been there. They're mad that Michigan just hoisted up the national championship. The only thing you can do about it is come back and win. And I think that's the demeanor right now with guys like Denzel Burke, Emeka Ibuka, Travion Henderson. If they come back, one, gotta up my draft stock. It's not. It's just look at the facts. It's dropping. It's dropping. And some of that has to do with team success. Some of it does. And then the other factor, they haven't really won anything at Ohio State. They have the only thing that Ohio State has won in 3 years, as previously stated, is the Rose Bowl. That's it. No Big Ten championships, no Big Ten division championships. One Rose Bowl. That's it. It's the only thing they've won in 3 seasons. Haven't won anything in 2 seasons. Not characteristic for Ohio State, not. But bring Denzel Burke back, huge. It is possible they could return their entire secondary. Obviously, Lathan Ransom made the decision to come back. So you have Burke. You're going to have Burke, Ransom. You have Sawyer up there. Like I said, I'm really high on the on Houston, Edric Houston that's coming in. I think he will be in the fold. I don't know if JTT is going to come back. Today, I would say he will not. Just through a hunch, because a lot of the mock drafts have him in the first round. So I would assume that he's going to be gone, but you have Edric Houston comes in, fills that role, so that will be fine. But you're starting to look at this team. It's time to start talking possible national championship. You're putting the pieces together. A lot of things are falling into place here that championship teams need. First off, their schedule, very favoring schedule. You're returning veterans. That's always a solid. In college sports, that's always a solid. 2002, they brought back Mike Doss. Nobody thought they were bringing him back. Huge guy to bring back. So that's always a solid to do that. You got a good freshman class coming in. You got the number 1 overall guy. What's so convenient is they were able to get the number 1 guy right on the verge of losing Marvin Harrison Jr., which is just unbelievably key. I think Jeremiah Smith plays a big role. It looks like they have a proper quarterback, veteran guy, an adult, can lead the room, not a kid. And you brought in perhaps the best running back in the country in Judkins. And, I think that a lot of people are talking about the off-the-field issues and, him being maybe a locker room cancer and all that. I think he'll be fine. I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue. Personally, I just don't see that being a big issue here. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and we'll see if it's wrong. But he's going to get his touches. He's not going to have to worry about that. The cameras are going to be on him. I think it'll be fine. I'm not worried about Judkins' off the field issues with other players. I think it'll be just fine. And I also think that, to win a national, you need that premier. You got to be able to run the football, and that's a premier back. And like I said, I talked about in the last video, you have 3 different ways of running the football now, 3 different gadgets to it. You got Travion Henderson, the deep threat guy, uh, the side to side runner. You have Judkins, who's really good in between the tackles, can bounce it outside if he needs to, but really solid at taking hits, bouncing off the tackler, getting that extra like 5 to 10 yards. Really good at that. And then you have the running quarterback aspect and Will Howard, who in every year has had at least a touchdown run of 70+ yards, which is crazy. I'll repeat that again. All of his years in college, he's had a touchdown at run of at least 70 yards, his longest ever 80. 80-yard touchdown run once, Will Howard. So you're going to have a really good running attack. The offense is going to be much improved. And then let's actually get into the Josh Fryer stuff. Josh Fryer out. Move that had to be done. And Ryan Day was able to pull the trigger and do it. O-line, it's going to be a lot better. It's more tuned. Obviously, you brought in McLaughlin, who number 1 O lineman in the portal. That's going to be big. Sometimes when a collective group that has a lot of talent is doing really bad, some of the time it is that the players aren't stepping up to the occasion, but some of the time we're talking about kids here. I mean, you got to have the right coach. You got to have a motivator. You got to have somebody that, can get under their skin if they have to. And, maybe Josh Fryer just wasn't the guy for that. When a collective group of players that have that much talent are that bad, it's usually someone upstairs. It's usually someone on the staff. And I think clearly Josh Fryer was the issue. So, I mean, that's good. You're able to move on from that. And I think that's really key. And I think that's going to lead. It's just going to be a great factor for Ohio State, just being able to move on at that point and go in a different direction. But like I said, I'm looking at this team and I'm saying it looks like all the makings of a national champ. And it's so early to be saying this. But when you retain somebody like Denzel Burke, a clear first round talent that people don't see, who should be gone any other year seems like gone, it's in the right direction. When you bring in the number 1 back, when you bring in the number 1 O lineman, the number 1, he's number 1 O lineman by portal standards. But when I say Judkins is the number 1 running back, that's not just by portal standards. That's by, in my opinion, NCAA football standards. The guy can play. He's good. He can change games. The guy that we're bringing in, Judkins. So when I'm saying that, it's not the number 1 portal guy. It's, in my opinion, the number 1 back. Game changer. And what's crazy is I would have given us a really good fighting chance if the only move we made was Will Howard this offseason. So, and if Denzel Burke left. And we got both of them back, Judkins and McLaughlin. So it's looking good. They're not done making moves yet, but from the start of January, it's been all positives. They got that loss, that terrible game out of the way. And since that loss, you could say that the team up north winning national championships is negative, but that's out of our control at this point. But since the new year, it's been all wins so far. And then I did briefly want to touch on Nick Saban, which I'll do a whole other I have a whole other video planned for Saban, but steps down today. which I wouldn't say is the biggest shocker in the world. Like he was getting old. I thought maybe he would announce it like amidst the season, like Coach K for basketball. Usually, when you're that big of a legend, you announced, "Hey, this will be my final year," so you kind of get the goodbye tour. But maybe he didn't want that. Um, that frees stuff up. That actually also opens the door for transfers as well. Because players are gonna leave Alabama, most likely some. Recruits might flip. That's a big deal. It's a really big deal, Nick Saban leaving there. And they're at a point where who are they gonna get? So even better for Ohio State's chances next year. It's looking like next year, Alabama gonna be a bit under the weather. Michigan gonna lose half their players, probably gonna lose Harbaugh here very soon, and they're gonna face all those sanctions. So those are two teams that you should be a lot better than. And if not, it's probably going to be a problem, but they should be a lot better than those two teams. And you're talking about the national champion and most pretty much the runner up. I mean, you can give the runner up to Washington, but Alabama was clearly the only other team that was going to win the national championship that year. So all of a sudden, two of the top finishers last year might be out of the race. And who's that leave you with next year? You got Oregon's going to be really good with Dylan Gabriel. Um, Texas, they're going to be up there again. I don't know if they're going to be as good, but they're going to be up there again. Well, yeah, they're playing in the SEC now. Georgia is going to be really good next year. And then it's Ohio State. I see 4 contenders next year. 4. Maybe Penn State slides in there, but I see 4 to 5 contenders next year. That's what I see today. And I would say, other than Georgia, I don't see a better team going into the next year than Ohio State. I just don't. And a lot of people, there's probably going to be a wild backlash on that, but I simply don't see going into next year. I don't see a team in a better position to win the national championship than either Georgia or Ohio State. It's not Michigan, guys. It's clearly not Alabama after today. So, solid day for the Buckeyes. You bring back Denzel Burke. You get rid of Josh Fryer. And Nick Saban, legendary head coach for Alabama, retires. I'd say that's a pretty good day.